Welcome to Wavemakers, the podcast where we dive into the stories of bold thinkers, trailblazers, and innovators who are making waves in their communities, industries, and beyond. Together, we'll explore the ideas, challenges, and victories of people who are shaping the future. At Wavemakers, we bring you thought-provoking conversations with those who are pushing the boundaries, defying expectations, and creating impact in their own unique ways. While we're proudly produced by Rio Salado College, a place that values lifelong learning and community impact, this podcast isn't just about education. It's about real-world stories of passion, perseverance, and progress. So, if you're ready to dive deep into the big ideas and get inspired by those who are making waves, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome to Wavemakers. I am your host, Michelle Reese, and I am excited to be here again today with two new guests who are going to talk about a program we have and how it's helping a population of students. Actually, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Henry, if you want to start.
Yeah, of course. My name is Henry Smith. I'm the Title V Program Manager here at Rio Salado, and I am fortunate enough to head up the Avanzar Program.
Thank you so much. And Clarice, how about yourself?
Hi, I'm Clarice Wziatek. I'm an academic life coach for the Avanzar Program, also under the Title V grant.
Ooh, academic life coach. I have not heard of that one. I'm excited to hear a little bit more. Since we're talking a little bit about education, why don't you both just, what are your degrees in? What's your background, Clarice?
I have a bachelor's in journalism and a master's in international journalism. And my goal was to eventually get a doctorate to teach, to kind of like edge or segue into higher education, though. I wanted to get some experience. So I was an academic advisor for the last 12 years, and I really enjoy working with students, helping them meet their goals. With journalism, I feel like everybody has a story to tell. And as I started working with students, helping them actually realize their story was just really gratifying, and just seeing like how excited they were when they hit those milestones and those successes. And now I've segued from advising for specific programs into doing more of that through the life coaching or academic life coaching.
Okay, so you're talking my language when you talk about storytelling, because I agree it's so important. And with my own background in journalism, those student stories cannot be any better than where we are sitting today. Henry, how about your own background?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in writing. I have a master's degree in educational leadership, and then I also hold a principal certificate in the state of Washington and in the state of Arizona. I've always loved English. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I'm a first-generation college student. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. But I just kind of majored in English and sort of decided to go into teaching through college. And that's kind of where I ended up. I taught high school for about 7 years at an alternative school in Washington State. And then I was a principal at a middle school and an elementary school, both in Washington and Arizona. And now I'm in higher ed.
That is an incredibly varied background in education. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We're here to talk about the Avanzar program. And the Lumina Foundation has declared the new majority learner. The student demographic population that we see today certainly looks different than when I went to school in the 90s, and probably very different from when you both went to university. There's there's a bigger variation, that new majority learner. There's more students who are coming from single family homes. There's more first generational students, more students of color, more parenting students. My understanding is that's a little bit of the population you're trying to target with Avanzar. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Avanzar project is designed to target students who are underserved, Hispanic students, students of color, and Pell-eligible students. And effectively, we do that in a three-prong approach. So much like you were talking about, Michelle, there are a lot of really complex issues that students deal with now, especially when you have students who have children of their own or who are caring for family members, or students who deal with poverty or substance abuse or even domestic violence situations, things of this nature. And so while we have advising, we have counseling and things like that in colleges, there's kind of this gray area that academic life coaching sort of addresses. And this gray area seems to become more and more prominent as people's lives get more complex, as you were saying, especially as we look at just the way that things are for students, especially low-income students or those who have those struggles. There's just different challenges that may not have always been. And so we're kind of here to answer those questions and help to solve those problems.
Well, it sounds like, Clarice, that's a little bit where you come in, that student-facing role as an academic life coach. Tell me, why is it so important to have that piece for this population? What are you doing for them? How are you helping them?
Yes. When it comes to how I'm best serving the students is we really get to explore not only who they are, but, if they come with questions like, am I on the right path? Sometimes, an advisor is specific for a program and they can't really say, well, let me, sit down and figure out, are we on the right path or is this the right program for you? We have the tools where we can, have a student explore, 3 different life pathways. And I can ask them, powerful questions about those pathways to really help them like self-reflect, maybe just even think about that question. Like, we have the skills and the tools for them to really explore, exactly what they are, wanting to achieve. Another tool that we have is my team, we are Gallup Strengths certified. So we also provide codes to the students to get their top 5 strengths. Then we coach to those strengths and, how are they best, serving them as a student? How are their strengths serving them, as an employee? How are they serving them, in their community? Once we explore those, we talk about, the blind spots of those strengths. We talk about their theme dynamics, how they're combined. And I think that tool of like self-discovery is very empowering to the student, because these are probably things that they haven't explored before or thought of. And these are strengths, Gallup has them that you're going to take this assessment and those strengths are something you're going to have, those are natural and innate. And how can you best utilize that? But yeah, how are those strengths applied to the life paths that you are exploring? So it really helps set the tone for that relationship that maybe other departments can't provide. And it really gives that student support. And if they're coming with maybe, concerns or challenges, we get to hold them accountable, but in a very, I would say, nurturing and positive way. And that accountability, I think, it's great for them to reflect on, but it also makes them feel that we care. And I think, they may not be experiencing that sort of care outside of, this academic environment or that type of support.
You touched on a couple different hats that student populations today wear. They're caregivers, they're working, they're students, they're community members. How does what you're doing as an academic life coach maybe differ from what you did as an academic advisor?
Oh, well, it's completely different. I mean, as an advisor, you're specified to a program, you help with registration. I mean, you can help provide like university resources, but you don't always have the time to have those in-depth quality conversations that really benefit the student experience. As a life coach, we have the time to explore those challenges, celebrate, the positive, experiences the students are having, just taking that time. And, and if we don't have an answer, we have a little bit more time to do the research and help them with certain resources. It's just, just having the tools to ask, like I said, the powerful questions that other people may not be asking them, having the conversations and building that trust.
And a lot of that experience for you comes not only from being an academic advisor, but from the training you've received. Henry, tell me a little bit about how this program came to be and what are you envisioning for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's a 5-year program. We're just finishing up year 2 now. It's a $3 million grant from the Department of Education. And so this grant was written before I got to Rio Salado, so I kind of got to inherit the work, which has been super fun. And basically, the idea is just to expand those opportunities for students to help improve their overall experience with college. I remember when I was a college student, I'm a first-generation college student. I didn't know what questions to ask. I didn't know what doors to knock on. I didn't know the first thing about financial aid. My parents couldn't help me. College was kind of a mystery to my family, just this really enigmatic thing. And so I would have loved to have had an academic life coach when I was in college. And I remember, for me, I developed a relationship with one of the financial aid people at my college, and she ended up kind of being my academic life coach, so to speak. And I'll just never forget this relationship that I had with this individual, and I really felt connected to the college. I felt like somebody was really vested in my success. And it's not that I wasn't getting that elsewhere. It's just that level of touch and commitment that she had. She would reach out to me to keep me accountable. Hey, don't forget there's deadlines for things, all that good stuff. I so appreciated that. And I really don't know where I would be right now had it not been for that person. And so really my vision, I have 4 academic life coaches that work on the Avanzar project. And if all of them could make those kinds of connections with students and help them persevere, especially when we think about the challenges that they face are so much greater than anything I face. I grew up middle class. I'm a white male. So I had a lot of things kind of working for me. Then I think about these students who have kids of their own or who don't speak English as their native tongue, or the amount of challenges that they face is just absolutely incredible. And so to be able to have a team that's dedicated to doing this work, to helping students realize you are in the right place. You're not an imposter. College is accessible. You can do this. I want to see you succeed. That's really my vision, is to for everyone to have that.
I think a lot of colleges are facing that retention concern with a lot of students, because when you're talking about especially adult learners, like you said, who are caregivers either for their parents or their children, they have so much time during a day and it's being stretched so far. And it sounds like that's something you're both working on. One topic you both mentioned, I'd like to kind of go back to accountability. And when you are a student who also works, who's also caring for others, trying to fit that accountability piece for yourself can be difficult. So, Clarice, how are you trying to help students with that accountability? What areas are you trying to help them grow in?
Well, usually setting, sometimes it's setting boundaries or, having follow through, as well as time management and time blocking. A lot of those conversations come up consistently. Just being able to say what's, prioritizing what's important, maybe making a decision, between two things that, are of equal importance. How do you fit that in your day? Just not only setting the boundary, like saying, okay, I have to say no to this, but then also having that follow through. Like they might tell me, oh, yeah, I'm not going to, go out tonight. I'm going to, stay home and do my homework, or I'm going to, do my other responsibilities. But then it's also, just you have that follow through when it actually the situation presents itself. And it's just kind of coaching the student, to make, like I said, they know themselves best. So to make those decisions, for themselves and to see the outcome. And we also, in the coaching, world, it's also like finding out and exploring their motivation and, really like learning those intricacies for that student to kind of help coach them based off of their motivation style and really provide them with those tools so that they can continue making those decisions that are going to benefit them.
So a lot of it sounds like you really need to get to know the students. What type of questions are you asking them when you're having your coaching sessions with them?
Well, I mean, usually when it comes to getting to know the student, I do ask them, do you have previous experience in higher ed? I'll ask them their like informational questions just to get to know them. Why did they select this specific program? And then, those will kind of segue into other things as they start to talk. And then they'll talk about, like, oh, this is really challenging for me right now. And then I say, what are those challenges, and what does it feel like when you're facing those challenges? And as we ask these questions, then we can kind of like unpeel, I guess, the layers of the onion, so to speak, and really get to the core. And once we get to know one another, like that also helps them feel like that they can trust me, that I have that trust with them, that they're telling me these things in confidence, or, just, knowing that I can help them and provide, that type of care.
Talk to me a little bit, Henry, about some of the challenges you think this current generation of students are facing, especially those who are doing school online at their own pace and trying, to achieve that academic goal, whatever it may be. What are some of those challenges?
I mean, I think there's students face financial challenges, they face health challenges. I think another challenge that they face is just this overall, the idea of being a college student, especially when you're in an online kind of context. A lot of students really just want to do their classes, get their degree, and be done. And I think that there's a lot of missed opportunity there. I think there's a lot of students who maybe don't take full advantage of what they can get as a college student because they just don't know. They just want to do the classes, they want to get done, they want to get their degree, get their job, X, Y, Z. And so I think that that's definitely a challenge that the program faces as well, is how do we overcome that, and how do we sell our product to students? How do we convince them that we have something that they need, that being involved in affinity groups is something that can be supportive and powerful for your development, that we can help connect you with tutoring and all the things Clarice talked about, exploring your interests and really knowing yourself, things that you may not even realize that you need. It's kind of that's a challenge that we have as far as just trying to get that marketed. Our students face all kinds of other things, back to your original question. And it's complex. There are students who are doubled and tripled up. There are students who won't even tell us what kind of issues that they have. So I think it's a whole gamut of things, and that's kind of what the Avanzar project is designed to address, those types of things where there isn't a department for it, but students experience it.
I had the opportunity to actually get an email from one of your students, and I just want to read to you what the student said about their life coach. So the student said, "I have been learning to focus on my strengths and how to apply my attributes to a career or in my daily life. Since working with the life coach, I have communicated and practiced articulating my thoughts and feelings more efficiently." I mean, this is not standard counseling. This is actual steps that they're learning to apply to different areas of their life. Clarice, what are some of the most valuable steps that you're hoping to give to your students that you work with?
Well, the most important thing, I think, is be like also reframing like a negative situation, reframing a challenge, teaching and coaching through our sessions to help students, if they experience a challenge, how can they reframe that in a positive light? Teaching them the tools to, go forward, essentially without the coaching eventually.
It sounds like the work you're doing is providing tools to students, Clarice, that maybe they didn't know they even had in themselves or that they've never heard about. Can you kind of talk me through what that looks like?
One of the most, I would say, profound experiences that I've had in a coaching session. Recently this summer, our team went through a Design Your Life course, which is provided by Stanford. And so the entire team went through that. And not only did we where we're provided with tools on, coaching students or helping them create a life of happiness, which is the goal. It also had some team building inside of that as well, which we did like some self-discovery on how to work better as a team. But for the students specifically, it's how the Design Your Life course focuses on creating 3 different pathways for your life. And you can do that at any stage. You could be in your Odyssey stage, which is, between the ages of 20 and about, I would say, 40. Or if you want to do it in your golden years, whatever it may be, you can always use these tools. And so the goal is to create a 5-year plan in 3 different formats. What path you think you're on now, an alternative path if plan 1 doesn't work out, and then the third plan would be like, if you had unlimited resources or constraints, what is your dream 5-year plan? And then there's gauges at the bottom of the worksheet where you would, write out, do you have the resources for this? How comfortable are you with this plan? Do you have the confidence to carry out this plan? And then after you create that, you can do it in any way you want, like make a list, do visuals. It says, what questions do you have about this plan? And then you look and the student themselves will self-reflect and then say, okay, well, in year 3, I want to have $50,000 saved up. Is that doable? Is that possible? Or something of that nature. So this one student asked me about a 5-year career plan. And right now they've just begun their associates in exercise science. And so I said, of course, let's do this and then we'll coach to it. So they completed these 3 worksheets. They sent them over so I could see them as well. And we had a 90-minute coaching session. We took about 30 minutes for each life plan. And, I asked certain questions. The student reflected on that. We, determined if their questions that they posed for each life plan could be completed or if they were on the right track. And then I asked and I said, these other plans like 2 and 3, what was your inspiration for creating these 2 other life plans? And they said, I didn't even think about an alternative route. And I think this is very crucial because, we, start with a plan as a student and, we think we have to follow that through, or maybe we make, changes in our major a couple times and we aren't really sure what to do. And then, of course, that takes away from resources, we're, time and finances. And it can be frustrating. And I think sometimes when students don't know what to do, they can just give up. But having an alternative plan that you're satisfied with, or 2 alternative plans that you're satisfied with, can then really set the tone saying, okay, not only am I capable of this plan, but if something, is an obstacle or a roadblock and I can't do this for whatever reason, I can switch gears and I'm going to be happy with this. And just it starts, I think it just starts inspiring that like growth mindset that I do have other options, or I can, I at least am starting to think about those things. And so the student hadn't done that before. And she's like, I really think that now that I've done this, I feel like I have more control. That's basically, what she's saying. I have more control of like what my future and what my outcome could look like.
We've seen studies just like what you talked about, Clarice. If students can connect their education to what their future may look like, they're more likely to succeed and complete their education. So this is work that you're doing, hits that just on, the nail on the head, if you will. But Henry, how can other colleges and universities do this if they haven't started this already? What are those baby steps to get them going?
That's a great question. So academic life coaching is pretty new to higher ed. At the end of this grant, we want to institutionalize the work, right? So after the 5 years is up, we want to be able to make a case that this is something that has been so beneficial to the college that we can't afford not to fund it, right? So that's what we're shooting for at the end of this. Now, we are, of course, almost exclusively online at Rio Salado, so we face different colleges or different challenges as far as implementation of the work. I think for colleges that have in-person learning opportunities that might be even a little bit easier, honestly, to start it. Getting, I think, the word out is really crucial. Making sure that students are aware that this exists. and what it's for and the value that it can add. I didn't have a plan. Like, I was just thinking when Clarice was talking, I don't think I really had like a plan at all when I went to college. Like, I knew I had to go to college, but I didn't have a plan beyond that. And I just think how powerful that would have been for me, how much more control I would have felt I was in, and how much more confident I would have felt if I would have had somebody to help coach me through that thinking and help me take control a little bit more and really see how education is going to connect to my future. Hey, luckily I turned out fine. Okay, everything worked out great. But I think it would have been a heck of a lot easier if I had someone to help me with that. And I think that if you can articulate that message to students that this is the value that we add, I think that's really crucial. The other thing too is that there's data that shows an alarming number of students who drop within the first 2 weeks of school. So think about that, right? You invest all this time, you tell your whole family you're going to college, right? It's this big giant thing, and then you get a bad grade or something, or you have a hiccup, and you don't know who to go to. You feel silly, so you just kind of stop going. And I think that's something that a ton of students face, especially those who face the challenges we talked about with regards to poverty, being first-generation students. But honestly, I think every college should look at having some mode of this. But again, it takes time to build because you have to gain trust with students first. And Clarice touched on that. If the students don't trust you, if they don't feel like you're vested in them, it's a pointless endeavor. And that takes time, that takes effort, that takes energy to do. So I would say you have to approach this work with like patience with urgency is what I call it. That you're not going to get 10,000 students beating the door down for services right away. You have to kind of gain traction. You also have to find a way to sell it to the community. What is it that is, how is this life coaching going to benefit students beyond what would be offered at a regular university that maybe doesn't have the same capacity? So those are some things I would definitely focus on. If you're trying to get this started yourself or institutionalize it, those are crucial. Another piece that's been really invaluable has been the training component. So the coaches have done the Design Your Life training, which is what Clarice was just talking about. They are also Gallup Strength Coach. What are you guys?
Gallup Strength Finder coaches.
Gallup
We're
Strength
certified.
Finder coaches. They're certified there. They are also almost done with getting an ICF, International Coaching Federation certification in academic life coaching. It's also of note that typically in the private sector, if you want to get life coaching for yourself, it costs $75 to $200 per hour. We give it for free here. Just if you qualify for the program, you get unlimited sessions for free. So that's always a huge selling point. But yeah, so I would say that the training, how you communicate to the community and students, how you market your product, I would say are the most important things to start with.
And showing the benefit, and you've just described it, the multi-layered benefit to the students that'll ultimately impact their educational outcome. So thank you so much for sharing that. We did name this podcast Wave Makers, and one of the thoughts I had last night as I was thinking about today's session was how you guys are all wave makers in the lives of the students that you're impacting. I recently had the opportunity to reconnect with literally the high school journalism teacher who set me on the trajectory to my life. Can you guys think back as we close off this session, what wave makers were in your own lives, or how you hope you're a wave maker to the students you're serving? Henry, you want to?
Yeah, I'm just, so I can think back to teachers I've had that were fantastic. And like, this is something that always resonates with me. You think about your best teacher and you don't remember what you really learned necessarily. You remember how they made you feel. And so I remember for me, it was my high school English teacher, Mr. Tate. That was the first time I ever felt like I could be an academic, or that I could hang in college. You know what I mean? That he was the first person that really made me feel smart, I guess. And I think that was what really triggered my love for learning, and what really made me hungry. That's why I became an English major. I also speak it, so that there's that. But I think Mr. Tate was huge, and then it would have been Marcia Pecchia, the financial aid person I was telling you about, who really helped me navigate college. I think if it wasn't for those two people, there's no way I'd be in this seat right now.
And we are very grateful that you are. Clarice, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple instructors come to mind from high school, but I think the most influential was Mr. Dehe. He taught history and philosophy, and so that was just life changing because you're probably like, I don't know, 15 or 16. You've grown up with, from a sociological standpoint, with your family, with your traditions, with your beliefs, and just to explore that there's so many other options out there. I mean, that really inspired my curiosity, my love of learning, and, it just really it just inspired me to want to research more, learn more, and not only do that, but share what I was learning with others. And so, I've gone through quite, an educational experience, through getting my bachelor's and my master's. And I've made mistakes and I've learned from them. And so when I'm working with students and I'm hearing they might be trying to make that decision, I'm like, oh, I've already done that. It's always nice to kind of ask them what their thought process is and see, if that's going to be the right choice for them. And then maybe even lend a little bit of well, this was my experience, maybe we should, look into that a little bit more, and just really help them, on a positive pathway.
I once heard a quote. It was Kendra Hall who said, "Someone needs to hear your story to finish their own." And it sounds like what you guys are doing as academic life coaches are not only helping them design those paths and see the options in front of them, but sharing a bit of yourself so they can help reach their academic goals. So I want to thank you both for being here. This has been a great discussion, and I really look forward to seeing where this goes in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, listeners, for being here. This is Wave Makers. We hope you come back to listen soon.